It was a cold and rainy night in the small town of BlackWood. For months, the town had lived in fear because of a mysterious serial killer known only as the Midnight Hunter. Nobody knew who he was. Nobody knew what he looked like. The only thing police knew was that every crime happened exactly at midnight, and before each attack, the victim would receive a phone call from an unknown number. Emma, an 18-year-old high school student, thought the stories were exaggerated until one evening when she was home alone. Her parents were out of town, and the rain hammered against the windows. While scrolling through social media, her phone suddenly rang. The screen displayed unknown number. She hesitated before answering. "Hello," she said. For several seconds there was only static. Then a distorted voice whispered, "I'm watching you." The call ended immediately. Emma laughed nervously and assumed it was a prank. But moments later she received a text message. It contained a photograph of her house taken from outside. Her smile disappeared. She quickly called her best friend Jake and told him everything. Jake tried to calm her down and promised to come over. 20 minutes later he arrived, but Emma was still frightened. They checked every door and window. Everything was locked. Suddenly, the lights flickered. A loud bang echoed from upstairs. Both of them froze. Jake grabbed a flashlight and slowly climbed the stairs while Emma followed behind. They searched every room but found nothing. Just as they were about to relax, Emma's phone rang again. Unknown number. Her hands trembled as she answered. The same distorted voice whispered, "Look behind you." Emma turned around. At the end of the hallway stood a tall figure dressed in black. Before she could scream, the lights went out. Darkness swallowed the house. Emma and Jake ran downstairs and locked themselves inside the kitchen. Jake immediately called the police. Within minutes, officers arrived and searched the property. However, they found no sign of an intruder. Detective Harris, the lead investigator on the Midnight Hunter case, listened carefully to Emma's story. When she showed him the photograph and the call history, his expression became serious. He explained that every previous victim had received the same calls. Realizing Emma might be the killer's next target, Harris assigned officers to watch the house overnight. Midnight approached. The streets outside were empty. Rain continued falling. Several police cars waited nearby. Inside the house, Emma sat nervously while Jake tried to reassure her. Then, exactly at 12 a.m., her phone rang once more. Unknown number. Detective Harris answered this time. "Who are you?" he demanded. The caller laughed softly and said, "You're too late." At that moment, the electricity in the entire neighborhood went out. The house plunged into darkness. Officers rushed inside while flashlights cut through the blackness. A scream echoed from upstairs. Everyone ran toward the sound. They found Emma alone in her bedroom, terrified but unharmed. Written on the wall behind her was a message, "I was here." Detective Harris realized something was wrong. The killer had entered a house, surrounded by police, and escaped without being seen. That seemed impossible. As the officers searched again, Harris noticed Jake acting strangely. He wasn't scared. He wasn't surprised. He seemed calm. Harris asked where he had been during the blackout. Jake hesitated before answering. The detective's suspicion grew. A technician soon arrived with new information. The unknown calls had been traced. They all originated from a phone hidden inside Jake's car. Silence filled the room. Emma stared at her friend in disbelief. Jake slowly lowered his head and smiled. "You were never supposed to find out," he said. Officers immediately arrested him. The town celebrated when the news spread. The Midnight Hunter had finally been captured. Weeks later, life returned to normal. Emma began to recover from the nightmare. One evening she sat alone in her room, watching television. A news reporter announced that Jake had confessed to multiple crimes and would spend the rest of his life in prison. Emma switched off the television and sighed with relief. Then her phone rang. Unknown number. Her blood ran cold. With shaking hands, she answered. A familiar distorted voice whispered, "Jake wasn't the Midnight Hunter. He was only helping me." The call ended. Emma rushed to the window. Across the street, beneath a flickering streetlight, stood a dark figure wearing a black hood. The figure slowly raised a hand and waved. Then the streetlight went out. When it came back on a second later, the figure was gone. Emma's phone vibrated one last time. A new message appeared on the screen. "See you at midnight." The screen faded to black.